From a director who fled to the Caribbean mid-shoot to a pinball machine with only 10 prototypes ever made, the 1983 fantasy epic Krull is packed with bizarre production secrets that rival its on-screen oddities. Between buckets on heads standing in for monsters and a fortress explosion filmed completely upside down, this cult classic hides astonishing stories behind every frame. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about Krull. Fact 1. The director hated making it so much. He took a Caribbean vacation mid-shoot. Making a big-budget fantasy film in the early 1980s was no easy task, but director Peter Yates found the experience of filming Krull so unbearable that he literally walked away from the production halfway through. According to special effects artist Brian Johnson, who worked extensively on the film's visual effects sequences, Yates became so frustrated and exhausted with the demanding production that he decided he needed a break. But this wasn't just a weekend off or a few days to recharge. Yates packed his bags and took a 3-week vacation to the Caribbean, leaving the entire cast and crew in a state of confusion and limbo. During his absence, the production essentially ground to a halt for certain sequences that required his direct involvement, though second unit directors and effects teams continued working on what they could. Johnson later revealed this detail in interviews, describing how the director's departure created significant challenges for everyone involved. The experience highlighted just how grueling and technically complex the film was to make, with its combination of elaborate sets, difficult special effects work, and ambitious action sequences. When Yates finally returned from his tropical escape, he had to jump back into the chaos of finishing a film that was already facing budget concerns and scheduling pressures. Despite his mid-production vacation, Yates did complete the film, though his experience on Krull apparently left such a negative impression that he never directed another fantasy or science fiction film again, returning instead to more grounded dramatic projects for the remainder of his career. Fact 2. The 007 stage was so massive, it created its own weather. Krull was filmed at Pinewood Studios in England, home to one of the most legendary sound stages in cinema history, the 007 stage. Originally built for the James Bond film The Spy Who Loved Me in 1976, this massive structure measured an incredible 45,400 square feet, making it one of the largest sound stages anywhere in the world at the time. The production team chose this enormous space to construct the Black Fortress sets and other massive interior environments that the film required. However, working inside such a gigantic enclosed space created some genuinely bizarre problems that the crew never anticipated. The stage was so vast that it would literally develop its own weather patterns and atmospheric conditions. Temperature differences between different areas of the stage, combined with the heat generated by the massive lighting rigs needed to illuminate such a large space, would cause humidity to build up inside the building. This humidity would sometimes reach such levels that actual rain would form and fall inside the soundstage, creating indoor weather that would disrupt filming. The crew had to carefully manage ventilation and climate control to prevent these spontaneous rainstorms from ruining takes or damaging the elaborate sets and costumes. This phenomenon wasn't unique to Krull, but affected many productions that used the 007 stage over the years, making it both a blessing and a curse for filmmakers who needed massive interior shooting space but had to deal with the unpredictable indoor climate it created. Fact 3. A nearly full-scale pinball machine exists, but only 10 were ever made. When Krull was released in 1983, pinball manufacturer Gottlieb saw an opportunity to create a tie-in game that would capitalize on the film's release. But instead of designing a standard pinball machine, Gottlieb's engineers decided to create something revolutionary and incredibly ambitious. The Krull pinball machine featured a groundbreaking 3-level playfield design, which was already complex enough on its own, but the real innovation was the transparent lower level that players could view through a special reducing lens. This optical system allowed players to see and interact with a miniaturized play area beneath the main surface, creating a truly 3-dimensional gaming experience that had never been attempted before. The machine incorporated multiple ramps, targets, and mechanical features spread across these different levels, making it one of the most mechanically complex pinball designs ever conceived. However, this incredible ambition came with a serious problem. The machine was extraordinarily expensive to manufacture, requiring precision engineering and specialized components that drove the production costs sky high. When Gottlieb calculated the final price point, they realized that the machine would be too expensive for arcade operators to purchase in meaningful quantities. Rather than commit to a full production run that might not sell, Gottlieb made only 10 prototype units to test the market. These prototypes were distributed to select locations, but the full production run never happened. Today, these 10 machines are incredibly rare collector's items, with pinball enthusiasts considering them among the most sought-after and innovative machines ever created, even though almost nobody got to play one. Fact 4. Liam Neeson and Robbie Coltrane's first major fantasy shows. Long before Liam Neeson would wield a lightsaber as Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn in Star Wars Episode I. The Phantom Menace, and decades before Robbie Coltrane would become beloved as Hagrid in the Harry Potter films, both actors appeared together in Krull as members of a ragtag band of outlaws. This was one of the earliest film roles for both men, who were relatively unknown at the time. Neeson played Keegan, a jovial and boisterous bandit who wielded an enormous axe and made jokes about having multiple wives in different villages. The character was written as comic relief, and Neeson brought an energetic, almost manic quality to the performance that showed hints of the screen presence he would later become famous for. Robbie Coltrane, meanwhile, played Rune, another member of the bandit group. However, there's a strange twist to Coltrane's involvement in the film. Although he physically appears on screen and performed the role during filming, his voice was completely dubbed over in post-production by actor Michael Elphick. The reasons for this dubbing remain somewhat unclear, but it was likely a creative decision by director Peter Yates, who may have felt that a different vocal quality better suited the character. This means that while Coltrane appears in Krull, audiences never actually hear his real voice in the film. For both actors, Krull represented an early stepping stone in careers that would eventually lead them to become international stars in massive fantasy franchises, though neither could have predicted their future success at the time. Fact 5. The lead actress was only 17 to 18 years old. During filming, when Lisette Anthony was cast as Princess Lissa, the female lead of Krull, she was just 17 to 18 years old, making her one of the youngest actresses ever to carry a major epic fantasy film. This was only her second film role, and suddenly she found herself at the center of a massive production, with a multi-million-dollar budget and some of Britain's most experienced actors surrounding her. The role of Lissa required her to portray a character who was supposed to be mature, regal, and commanding, despite Anthony's youth and relative inexperience. During filming, she did her best to bring depth and presence to the character, but when the film moved into post-production, the filmmakers made a significant decision. They felt that Anthony's natural voice sounded too young and didn't convey the authority and gravitas they wanted for a princess character who was meant to be a powerful figure. Rather than reshooting her scenes or working with Anthony's vocal performance, they decided to completely replace her voice. Actress Lindsay Krause was brought in to dub over every single line of dialogue that Princess Lissa speaks in the film. This meant that while audiences see Lisette Anthony on screen throughout Krull, they never actually hear her real voice at any point. Anthony had no control over this decision, and it was done entirely in post-production. Despite this unusual situation, she has spoken about her experience on Krull fondly in later interviews, acknowledging that it was an important learning experience early in her career, even if her vocal performance never made it to the final film. Fact 6. 16. Clydesdale horses trained for months to play fire mares. One of the most memorable sequences in Krull features the fire mares, magical horses that can travel vast distances at incredible speed. To bring these creatures to life on screen, stunt coordinator Vic Armstrong faced a unique challenge. The production needed horses that were large, powerful, and dramatic-looking enough to convincingly portray these mythical beasts. Armstrong's solution was to purchase 16 Clydesdale horses, the massive draft breed famous for their size and strength. But buying the horses was only the beginning. These animals had never been trained for film work, and the firemare sequences required them to perform in ways that were completely unnatural for horses. Armstrong and his team spent months training the Clydesdales to run on specially constructed treadmills while cameras filmed them against blue screens. Running on a treadmill is an extremely unusual and difficult task for a horse, requiring the animals to maintain steady motion without the natural feedback they would get from actual ground beneath their hooves. The training process was slow and required tremendous patience, with handlers gradually acclimating the horses to the strange experience. Additionally, the production supplemented these Clydesdales with horses borrowed from the Queen's Household Cavalry, the ceremonial military unit stationed near Buckingham Palace in London. These cavalry horses were already trained for discipline and could handle the noise and chaos of a film set better than typical horses. The combination of trained Clydesdales and experienced cavalry horses allowed the filmmakers to create the dramatic firemare sequences that became one of the film's most iconic visual elements. Fact 7. The Cyclops actor was essentially blind on set. Bernard Bresslaw, a veteran British character actor, took on the challenging role of Krull, the noble Cyclops who joins the heroes on their quest. But playing a one-eyed creature required Bresslaw to wear extensive prosthetic makeup that completely transformed his face and head. The makeup department created an elaborate headpiece that covered Breslaw's entire head, with his actual face hidden beneath layers of foam latex and appliances. A large mechanical eye was mounted on his forehead, controlled by radio signals from off-camera technicians who could make the eye move and appear to look in different directions. This impressive effect created the illusion of a genuine Cyclops, but it came with a serious practical problem. Bresslaw could only see through one tiny eye hole built into the prosthetic, giving him extremely limited vision while wearing the makeup. This restricted field of view made it nearly impossible for him to navigate the set safely, especially during outdoor location shoots. Several scenes featuring Krull were filmed in actual swamps and marshes with real water and mud. During these sequences, Bresslaw literally could not see where he was walking and had no way to judge depth or distance. To prevent him from accidentally stepping into deep water or getting stuck in the mud, other cast members had to physically guide him between takes, holding his arms and directing him where to step. Even during actual filming, actors near him kept watch to make sure he didn't stumble or fall. Despite these incredibly difficult working conditions, Bresslaw delivered a touching performance that made Krull one of the film's most memorable characters. Fact 8. The Black Fortress explosion was filmed completely upside down. The climactic finale of Krull features a spectacular special effects sequence where the beast's Black Fortress explodes and is pulled up into space, disappearing from the planet forever. This dramatic moment needed to look otherworldly and impossible, and the special effects team came up with an ingenious solution to achieve the effect. Rather than trying to make a structure appear to rise and explode using conventional techniques, they decided to film the entire sequence completely upside down. The effects team built a detailed miniature model of the Black Fortress and suspended it from the ceiling of the effects stage with the entire structure inverted. They then rigged the model with explosive charges and filmed it falling downward toward the ground, while it simultaneously exploded. The key to making this work was that gravity would naturally pull the debris downward in a realistic way as the structure broke apart. After filming this destruction sequence, the effects team took the film negative and simply reversed it, playing the footage backward. When viewed in reverse, what had actually been filmed as a structure falling and exploding downward suddenly appeared to be rising upward and exploding as it ascended into the sky. The technique created a unique visual quality that would have been nearly impossible to achieve any other way, especially with 1980s technology. The effect worked so well that audiences had no idea they were watching reversed footage, and the sequence became one of the film's most impressive visual moments, showcasing the creative problem-solving that special effects artists used before the digital age. Fact 9. James Horner's score is notoriously similar to Star Trek. Composer James Horner was hired to create the orchestral score for Krull, and he delivered a sweeping, epic soundtrack full of heroic themes and dramatic cues that perfectly matched the film's fantasy-adventure tone. However, there was one significant problem that audiences and critics noticed immediately upon the film's release. Just 1 year earlier, in 1982, Horner had composed the score for Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, which had become one of his most praised works. When people heard the Krull soundtrack, they immediately recognized that many of the musical themes, orchestration choices, and melodic patterns were strikingly similar to his Star Trek work. In some cases, entire passages seemed almost identical, just adapted slightly to fit different scenes. This wasn't a case of plagiarism or theft, since Horner owned the rights to his own compositional style, but it was clear that he had recycled many of his own musical ideas from one score to the next. This became a recurring pattern throughout Horner's early career, with the composer frequently reusing similar motifs, orchestrations, and even specific musical passages across multiple films. His scores for movies like Aliens, Willow, and many others would continue to feature recognizable elements that appeared across his various works. While some film music enthusiasts found this frustrating, arguing that each score should be unique, others appreciated Horner's distinctive style and saw these recurring elements as part of his musical signature. Regardless of the debate, the similarities between Krull and Star Trek II remain so obvious that even casual listeners can hear the connections between the two soundtracks. Fact 10. The first scene shot featured a death-defying spiderweb climb with no safety wires. When principal photography began on Krull, director Peter Yates made an unusual decision about which scene to film first. Rather than easing into production with something simple, he chose to start with one of the most dangerous and technically challenging sequences in the entire movie. The very first thing filmed was the scene featuring the Widow of the Web, where the character Inner, played by veteran actor Freddie Jones, climbs a massive spiderweb structure high above the ground. The production designers had constructed an enormous web set that stretched many feet into the air, creating a genuinely precarious environment for the actors. Freddie Jones was in his 50s at the time and was being asked to climb this structure for what would be a lengthy dialogue scene with actress Francesca Annis, who played the widow. The obvious safety measure would have been to equip Jones with hidden safety wires or harnesses that could catch him if he slipped or fell. However, Jones refused to use any safety equipment whatsoever. His reasoning was practical from a filmmaking perspective, but terrifying from a safety standpoint. He argued that any safety wires would be visible on camera, ruining the illusion and requiring either expensive effects work to remove them or limiting the camera angles that could be used. So instead, Jones climbed the massive web set with absolutely no protection, relying entirely on his own grip strength and balance to keep from falling. The fact that this extremely dangerous stunt was chosen as the very first scene to be filmed added even more pressure to an already tense situation, setting an intense tone for the rest of the production. Fact 11. Princess Lysa was originally going to become the villain. The final version of Krull that audiences saw in theaters tells a fairly straightforward story of a prince rescuing a princess from an evil creature. But earlier drafts of the screenplay had a much darker and more complex twist planned. According to actress Lysette Anthony, who played Princess Lysa, the original script featured a major turn near the end of the film where her character would have transformed into an antagonist. After spending most of the movie as the captive princess waiting to be rescued, Lysa would have undergone some kind of corruption or transformation that would have made her turn against the heroes, potentially setting up a tragic conflict where Prince Colwyn would have to confront the woman he loved. The specifics of exactly how this transformation would have occurred and what would have caused it remain unclear, but it would have dramatically changed the film's final act and given the story a much more morally complex conclusion. However, when the production team and studio executives reviewed this plot development, they decided to remove it entirely. Their reasoning was that they didn't want Princess Lysa to appear less than pure, meaning they wanted her to remain an innocent victim and romantic ideal throughout the entire story. Anthony herself later gave interviews where she expressed disappointment with this decision, saying she thought the choice to keep Lissa purely virtuous throughout was a little boring, and that the darker direction would have given her more interesting material to work with as an actress. The change reflects the conservative storytelling approach that many fantasy films of the 1980s took, where clear heroes and villains were preferred over morally ambiguous characters. Fact 12. The director used shock tactics to get actor reactions. Director Peter Yates employed some unconventional and occasionally bizarre methods to get authentic reactions from his actors during filming. Because Krull featured a villain called the Beast who only appears in a few scenes, there were many moments where actors needed to react to something that wasn't actually present on set. Rather than just describing what the actors should be reacting to and letting them use their imagination, Yates decided to create physical surprises that would generate genuine startled reactions. According to cast members, Yates would sometimes arrange for sudden, loud noises to be made just off camera at unexpected moments, causing actors to flinch or jump in surprise, which he would then use in the final film. Even stranger, production crew members were occasionally instructed to stand around wearing buckets on their heads to serve as stand-ins for the Beast during certain sequences. These bucket-headed crew members would be positioned where the Beast was supposed to be, giving actors something to look at and react to, even though the bizarre sight of people with buckets on their heads must have been more comical than frightening. These tactics worked reasonably well early in production when the actors weren't expecting them, but as filming continued, the cast members grew wise to Yates's methods. By the end of the shoot, the actors had become so accustomed to these surprise tactics that they stopped being effective, forcing Yates to find other ways to generate the reactions he needed, or simply rely on the actors' professional skills to create believable responses to imaginary threats. Fact 13. The film lost a staggering $30+ million at the box office. Krull was one of the most expensive films produced in 1983, with budget estimates ranging between $27 million and $47 million depending on the source. For context, this was an absolutely enormous amount of money for a fantasy film at the time, putting it in the same budget range as major blockbusters. The production costs were driven up by the extensive special effects work, massive sets built at Pinewood Studios, location shooting in difficult terrain, and the lengthy shooting schedule that extended for months. Columbia Pictures, the studio behind the film, invested heavily in Krull with the expectation that it would be a major hit that could compete with Star Wars and other successful science fiction and fantasy films of the era. Unfortunately, when Krull opened in theaters in July of 1983, it was a commercial disaster. The film earned only about $16.9 million at the domestic box office, failing to even recoup half of its production budget, and international sales didn't significantly improve the situation. This meant the studio lost over $30 million on the project, making it one of the biggest financial failures of 1983. The losses were so severe that in some markets, the film's theatrical run was cut extremely short. In certain New York City theaters, Krull literally opened and closed on the same day, with theater owners pulling the film after a single screening day because ticket sales were so poor. Having a film pulled that quickly was rare even for obvious flops, highlighting just how badly Krull was performing. The financial disaster effectively ended any possibility of sequels and damaged the careers of several people involved. Fact 14. The Beast was the first self-contained animatronic suit. The villain of Krull, known simply as the Beast, appears only briefly in the film but required extensive special effects work to bring to life. Special effects designer Nick Maley, who had previously worked on films including The Empire Strikes Back and was known for creating Yoda, was brought in to design and build the Beast creature. Maley decided to push the boundaries of what was technically possible with creature effects at the time by attempting to create what he later claimed was the world's first completely self-contained animatronic suit. Unlike traditional creature suits that relied on an actor's body movements alone, or elaborate animatronic puppets that required external cables and operators to control facial movements, Maley's Beast suit featured fully functioning animatronics built directly into the costume itself. The suit included mechanisms that allowed the creature's face to move and change expressions, complete with working jaw movements and eye articulation. Even more impressively, Meili incorporated functioning representations of biological systems, including lungs that appeared to breathe, a heart that seemed to beat, and body fluids that moved through transparent tubes, all designed to make the creature appear genuinely alive. The revolutionary aspect of the design was that all of these mechanical systems operated without a single external cable controlling them from off-camera. Everything was powered and controlled by systems built into the suit itself, meaning the actor wearing it could move freely without being tethered to external equipment. While later special effects work would surpass this achievement, at the time, Meili's design represented a significant technological breakthrough in practical creature effects. Fact 15. The planet name and villain name were accidentally swapped. The title of the film and the names of its central locations seem straightforward enough, with the story taking place on a planet called Krull, while the heroes battle a villain known only as the Beast. However, according to screenwriter Stanford Sherman, this wasn't how things were originally supposed to be. In a 1997 interview, Sherman revealed a surprising behind-the-scenes mistake that fundamentally changed the film's identity. In his original screenplay drafts, Krull was actually the name of the villain, while the planet where the story took place was called Beast World. This naming made a certain thematic sense, with the villain's name serving as the title of the film, similar to how many stories are named after their antagonists. However, at some point during the complex process of script revisions, production meetings, and pre-production planning, these two names somehow got switched. Whether this happened due to a clerical error, a miscommunication between writers and producers, or a deliberate change that was never properly documented, remains unclear. By the time anyone noticed that the villain and the planet had swapped names, the production was already too far along to change everything back. The film's title had been locked in, promotional materials were likely already being prepared, and making the correction would have caused chaos across multiple departments. So the decision was made to simply keep the names as they had been accidentally reversed. This means that everyone who has watched Krull over the past 4 decades has been experiencing a version of the story where a fundamental naming error became permanent, and the planet is called Krull while the villain is simply the Beast.